Good evening, members, and good evening to officers and to any members of the public who may be watching us. Welcome to this evening's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to welcome Chris Wilson, who's joining us for the first time. So welcome, Chris. Hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully we won't be too hard on you. And also welcome to Mary. I can see you are sitting there in the back. So sorry, Carolyn. Sorry, I can see Mary's there and you're Carolyn. So welcome, Carolyn, as well. So item 1, apologies. We have. Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm jumping the gun. I'm getting too excited. It must be the heat. Item 1, appointment of vice chairman. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I propose Councillor Goldsmith for vice chairman.
Okay, and I saw you. Are you proposing someone else, Diane?
No, I'm happy to second Councillor Goldsmith as vice chair.
Okay, we haven't asked Mayne if she's happy to do it. Are you happy to stand, Mayne?
Yes, Chairman, I'm very happy.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? In which case, can I have a show of hands that Mayne is the vice chairman for the civic year? I think that's unanimous. All right, thank you very much. Congratulations again. Right, now I can go on to item 2, apologies. We've had apologies from Ian Kemp. James Frecknell hasn't arrived yet, but I'm guessing he may be late. We certainly haven't had apologies, so hopefully he will be turning up. Item 3, minutes of the 22nd of March, pages 6 to 27. I don't propose to go through them page by page. Is everybody happy that it is a true and accurate record? Yeah, David proposing, Mayne seconding. Can I have a show of hands, please? I think that is unanimous. You weren't there, okay. Well, Chris didn't vote either because he wasn't there. But from all those, and Mary wasn't there, but for all those who were there, they have all voted. Thank you. Item 4, chairman's announcements. There aren't any really, other than do please speak closely into the microphone, because I believe that the webcast doesn't always pick up what we're saying. Item 5, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations? No. Item 6, East Hearts climate change strategy. Is that you, Ben? Oh, Jonathan, sorry. Jonathan.
Chair, I direct you to Councillor Graham McAndrew, who is going to introduce this item.
Third time lucky, Graham.
We eventually got here. Thank you, Chairman. Okay. I would like to start by welcoming members' continued interest in the Council's approach to tackling climate change and enhancing sustainability of the Council's actions, as well as those of our residents, businesses and visitors. I am now very pleased to put in front of the committee the Council's draft climate change strategy for consideration. As members will know, we already have in place a detailed Living Sustainability Action Plan, which is reviewed and published on a monthly basis. This new strategy adds to the action plan by clearly and succinctly laying out the Council's overall vision and approach. Importantly, and unlike many local authorities' strategies, the East Hearts climate change strategy makes clear what the Council is already doing and what changes we will assess between now and 2030 in order to meet the goal in the Council's climate change declaration to become a carbon neutral by 2030. This strategy also discusses the main mechanisms for working with partners and local people to achieve carbon neutrality across the whole district by this date. This strategy has been subject to public consultation with 35 respondents, individuals and community groups, making well-argued submissions. The analysis of the responses is given in the covering report. It would be fair to say that I was a little concerned to find that the majority of respondents disagreed that we have got the overarching priorities right. It appears to me, however, that these views largely reflect a desire to see specific interventions and priorities emphasised, rather than a belief that the Council's overall approach is at fault. As a result, we have rewritten the strategy to make the linkages between their ambitions and ours far clearer. I want to be absolutely clear that the consultation was not a tick box exercise. Rather, we have taken heed of everything we have been told. So paragraph 3.7 of the covering report lists the amendments we have made following the consultation, and paragraph 3.8 demonstrates our commitment to considering all specific suggestions for inclusion in our sustainability action plan. I welcome members' comments, and I recommend that, having considered the draft version, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee endorses the presentation of this strategy to the Executive for onward recommendation to Council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Do members have any questions? Chris, I believe you had some questions. Do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, take one at a time, I take it. Yeah. Have we looked at other similar district councils' climate strategies when developing ours? And if so, how does our strategy compare to theirs?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yes, we looked at other Hertfordshire district strategies, notably North Herts and Broxbourne. We also looked further afield, including accessing the strategies of districts which were rated highly in the Climate Coalition's recent review, such as East Devon's strategy. Unlike other strategies, ours sets out a route map for the actions Council will need to consider year by year to become carbon neutral by 2030. Is explicit about the co-benefits for residents' health of tackling climate change, and makes clear how residents and partners can feed into the governance of the sustainability agenda.
Do you have a supplementary on that one, Chris?
No, that's fine.
No. If I ask you, if you can do another one, because I know there are others, I'll let James ask a couple and then come back to you. Yeah.
Do one now, yeah? Okay. Can we incorporate advice and schemes for councillors into the strategy to help reduce our contributions to emissions, etc., by encouraging car shares and hosting civic events more often in places that are more accessible via public transport?
Councillor McAndrew, can you just put your microphone on, please?
I do apologise. Providing training to members is already included in our sustainability action plan. We can add a timescale for this and the key points for the training to cover to the action plan.
Do you have a supplementary on that one?
No.
No. Okay. If I will come back to you with the others, but James, do you want to ask? You've got a couple. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for my lateness. So can I ask firstly, is there any plan to replace the EV car club? And if so, can this be written into the strategy?
Right, I would like to point Councillor Preckendale to a detailed answer I gave to a related question from Councillor Crystal at Mayor's Council. In a nutshell, the DEFRA funding for the Council's e-car club pilot has now ended. However, we will very shortly be replacing our 5 diesel vans with 5 e-vehicles. These will be used as an e-car club for officers in the first instance, and we sincerely hope to open them up for public use once we have got the officer car club arrangement up and running.
James, do you have any supplementary on that one? No. Do you want to ask your second one then? And then we'll go to Norma and then we'll come back to you both.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just wondering as well, can there be a direct referral to the rewriting and refresh of the district plan in 2023 and the inclusion of the sustainable planning SPD into the district plan?
Right, yeah, good point. Well highlighted. This is included a little obliquely in the table on page 24 of the draft strategy. I'd be very happy to make this clearer, as updating the district plan is already listed in our sustainability action plan.
You happy with that answer, James?
Yes, thank you. That's very clear.
Thank you. Norma?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very simple question regarding recycling. We no longer have our paper bins, so everything is going in our recycling bin. We don't do the food waste anymore. Is there any way that come back where the paper and the plastics are again separate?
I've still got my paper bin, but Graham?
Yeah, that's a very valid point. The joint waste contract, over the next couple of months, there's actually 9 workshops, each approximately 4 hours in length, and all this will be discussed: the residual waste, the collection of food waste, paper collection, how we actually manage to collect paper going forward separately from other material, and the cost implications of that. So that will be looked at in the next couple of months, by the end of August.
Can I ask a supplementary on that one? My understanding is my paper bin is still being collected. We're still collecting green bins, aren't we?
Yes, the paper bit is still being collected, yes.
Right, it's just we're not issuing any new ones, and the new ones that we're issuing are the ones that go inside the blue bin.
The ones that's not been issued are the ones that's actually going inside the bin,
Oh,
because it costs so much, but for our old bins, it's been recycled, yeah.
All right, thank you. Chris, do you want to come back with your others?
Thanks, Chair. The access to the council building is not pedestrian friendly, and it's not easy to cross the road at the entrance on Peggs Lane. Can representations be made so this can happen?
Right, thank you. Any member may directly approach a highways team or lead member at Hertfordshire County Council with regards to road improvements. I would be happy to discuss Councillor Wilson's ideas with them outside of this meeting.
You happy with that answer? Yep. Do you have any more? Or was that? I haven't got your list in front of me, so I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to ask your one, and then I'll go back to James?
The responses to the consultation suggest, or I should say some responses to the consultation suggest the strategy is perceived as a mere PR exercise. Is there any evidence from these responses that this perception is due to the following things? Failed in the district plan to impose strict environmental standards for the building of new developments. Built car parks, to build car parks, cars will come. Not written an LC whip. Charged for garden waste, meaning food waste had to go in the residual waste, causing an increase in emissions. Agreed to build over the River Stort, causing environmental damage. Now still presiding over a car-dominated environment with AQMAs still in place.
Right, thank you. Only one of the 35 respondents made a specific comment that the climate change strategy appeared to be a PR exercise. This being, in their opinion, an attempt to mask inaction on protecting trees and wildlife in the Lee Valley Authority area. In addition, 2 respondents mentioned the term greenwashing, with both particularly keen to see action taken to take cars off the roads. With regard to the points Councillor Wilson lists, figure 4 in the covering report clearly shows that a sizable proportion of respondents see the issues he lists as priorities. We have explicitly referenced them in this strategy.
Do you have a supplementary, Chris? No, thank you. James, do you want to ask your third one?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was wondering if there could be the removal of the sentence stating that we only account for 0.4% of the carbon emissions across the district. And I'll clarify this, is because although this may be true, and as I appreciate this is a high level document, I'm not sure that it strikes the right tone. As a leader and as elected leaders, we should be saying what we can do as opposed to what we're limited to, because that would strike a better tone for me rather than this almost sort of defeatist one in that way.
A very important point Councillor Frecknell's raised. We were aiming to demonstrate the Council's direct emissions form only a small part of the overall picture. Hence the emphasis on using our regulatory powers and influence to bring about a wider change. I am open to overview and scrutiny members' views on how best to make this point.
Thank you. James, you got any comments?
No, I mean, it sort of follows into my next one. I'm grateful to Councillor McAndrew for being open to this. I think it's my following question was about possibly taking out the boxes stating what we've achieved, as I don't feel it has any real bearing on a strategy moving forward. It sort of makes it feel less like a strategy and more like almost like a manifesto. So if there is a way that we can show leadership in the way that we are moving the strategy forwards with our positive language as opposed to highlighting what we can't do, I think that would be really beneficial.
Thank you. Graham, do you want to comment on that, or is it?
No, so I'm happy with.
Yeah.
pick
Okay,
that point,
thank you.
yeah.
Are there any other questions from any other members? David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor McAndrew, this may only be a small fraction of the overall emissions in the district, but it is absolutely essential that we are seen to lead, and that also that this does happen. How confident are you that we will get down to carbon neutrality by 2030? Because these are pretty perky numbers. You know, could we do it faster? I'm sure we'd all like to do it faster, but you know, carbon neutral by 2030, you know, going from 68% baseline emissions in 21-22 down to just 37 by 26 is still fairly fast compared to a lot of organisations. So how confident are you can do it? Because I'm quite excited to get to carbon neutrality.
I'm very confident, and the officers are fully engaged with the process, and they're actually making it happen. And they are finding sort of initiative ways, new ways, and sort of reducing the emissions. One of the things, I mean, you mentioned emissions. I see on the agenda for later this evening, you've got low emission policy on taxis. Yeah, if I could just sort of mention what we are actually doing on taxis. As chair of the Hertfordshire Climate Change Sustainability Partnership, one of the things identified last year, the year previous, was that we wanted to see a low emission and age policy, taxi policy throughout the whole of the county of Hertfordshire. Now, our licensing officer here in East Herts is at the forefront of that, and he is the taxi licensing officer not only for Hertfordshire but for Bedfordshire as well. And he will be coming to the Hertfordshire Climate Change Sustainability Partnership meeting in July to explain the engagement he's had with all the 10 district boroughs and the county council. And we're also stretching out to Essex, and he was instrumental in changing Uttlesford's low emission and taxi policy, which is a really good one. And this will sort of go, you know, spread out hopefully to sort of east of England. We take on sort of more people. So, I mean, I'm only saying that because it shows the commitment and the dedication of the officers within East Herts. And it's not just within East Herts where the pollution is, it's all the sort of boundaries, etc. So, yeah, it's really exciting what's actually happening out there at this time and moment.
David, supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is one section which I might have liked to have seen a bit more meat on here, which was monitoring progress. I'm always a big fan of, as far as possible, when you have a target, you know, that it is measurable. This one is, you know, how do you see in reality the monitoring progress and the communication of that working? Because I think that's a key point for me going forward.
On the website, we have the East Herts Action Plan, and I believe completed actions are standing at 46 at the end of May, and there are currently 145 actions on there, and it is actually saying what state each action is at. Yeah, so you've got the completed actions and who is carrying out what and who is responsible for what actions. So it's there. But as we always say, that if it doesn't give enough clarity, please let us know and we can add more onto the action plan for the clarity of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Alex?
Thank you, Chair. Not as much a question, but a comment. So Councillor Frecknell said much that I agree with. I would caution, though, against removing the examples of good work that this council has already done in this policy area. They provide examples of good initiatives that can be expanded. They also demonstrate against that good work has already been achieved. And I think that's important when thinking about how this strategy becomes something more than simply a vision statement or a document to that effect. This is a document that is focused on actions, and by demonstrating actions that have already been taken, I think that grounds it in work that this council has done recently, is already doing, is planning to do in the corporate plan, etc., and other areas. So I would caution against removing those examples, though I understand Councillor Frecknell's well-made point. Just in addition, though, on this, the point about how this strategy is focused on EHDC's emissions, obviously this is for us getting to carbon neutral as a council, but I'm wondering if consideration may be given in future to how we can liaise with partners that we work on various projects with, on how they can reduce their emissions. So this can sort of the leadership that we're demonstrating at EHDC through this excellent strategy can be can lead others, other organisations, other stakeholders to act similarly as we reduce our emissions around the district, not simply a council, as a council, but as a district, as people of East Hertfordshire. And so I was wondering if Councillor McAndrew had any thoughts on that. Would that be something he'd be willing to look at in the coming years?
I'm quite open to thoughts the overview and scrutiny can put forward. And really, if you can actually put some ideas for us, we're open to whatever you want to think about putting forward.
Thank you. I see you nodding. You're happy with that answer, Alex?
No, I am. I just think sort of this is something. Well, reducing emissions is something that could perhaps be brought up with contractors, etc., with developers, and we've got this supplementary planning document, and that's going to play a big role in that. But I think it's sort of this part of emphasising how we are leading the way in the way that affects change in other organisations as well, so that they get their emissions down too. So I think we're already doing some of that. I'm just wondering if we could perhaps make that clearer in the document what we're doing on that, because we are doing a lot of good work on that front.
Yeah, on procurement, Jonathan might want to sort of intervene. We do ask the contractors and subcontractors to be sort of environmentally friendly, low emissions, etc. So with electric vehicles, electric tools, that type of thing. I don't know if Jonathan, you've got anything to add?
I think perhaps I just echo what Councillor McAndrew has said, and to assure members, and both Councillor McAndrew and myself on the officer side, very open to additional ideas and suggestions of actions. The action plan is not just focused on what we're doing about our own work and our own emissions. It does include reaching out and working through our partner networks and such like. And most definitely this adding on to what Councillor McAndrew was saying, for example, in that route map for example, just as an example, in the strategy, in the route map to carbon neutrality, we're explicitly saying about our grounds maintenance contract, for example, moving to e-vehicles and battery usage for the various kit that they use, as an example of what Councillor McAndrew was just saying.
Great.
Yeah, I'll just sort of recommend to members, if they haven't sort of looked at the action plan sort of lately, it is updated on a monthly basis and has been updated May. And there's two tabs there, one completed and one is ongoing action. So it really is worth a read. Yeah.
Thank you. Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this question is either to Jonathan or to Graham. Are we working with our housing associations within our district to try and get them to some sort of carbon neutrality? Thank you.
Do you want to answer it, Jonathan? Or?
Well, I'll let Jonathan. Yeah.
We're probably, thank you, Chair. I think we're fighting to probably say exactly the same thing. The answer is, yeah, most definitely yes. We work with, there's reference to it. I go back to the action plan, there's reference to it in our document here. And there's that read across with the housing strategy that the Oversight and Scrutiny members will be familiar with, where it talks very much about improving the condition of existing properties in whatever tenure. And for example, we are kind of, just within the last month, I've been talking with two of the larger associations about retrofit of their existing stock and very real potential for passive house development with one housing association. So yeah, this kind of plethora of working through our networks, of amplifying our message is very much the kind of bread and butter of how we're trying to do this.
Thank you. Graham, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe worth circulating the link to members for the action plan so they can go straight to it rather than have to sort of troll through the website.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I think members would appreciate that. Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands, in which case if I can take members to page 28, there is a recommendation that members consider the draft climate strategy 2022 to 26 as amended following consultation and endorse its presentation to the executive for onward recommendation to council for approval. We've obviously looked at it. We've made some comments. Could I have a proposal for the recommendation? That's Ian, seconded by Alex. Could I have a show of hands? Those in favour, please. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. In which case we move on to item 7, social value policies, pages 79 to 98. I believe that's Jeff.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. This is a new policy which aims to bring in an element, a dimension of social value when scoring any bidders for supplies or contracts to the council. And this comes from the Public Services Social Value Act of 2012, which requires an authority to consider how what is proposed to be procured might improve the economic, social and environmental well-being of the relevant area, and how, in conducting the process of procurement, it might act with a view to securing that improvement. So quite clearly, this aligns with our own corporate priorities. How we do this is to align with the National Social Value Measurement Framework, or more commonly TOMS, which is Themes, Outcomes and Measures. Those which we are intending to include within our strategy, within our policy, are included in Appendix A. Others which exist on the framework are in Appendix B, and it may look at face value as though those in Appendix B outnumber significantly those that we are including, but I just draw members' attention to the fact that there's a lot of sort of duplication and nuances within that list, and in fact those that we've have identified are perhaps more all-embracing than some of the specifics which are shown in Appendix B. The last thing just to mention, in order to be able to monitor the progress we're making with the policy through our procurement program, there is something called the Social Value Maturity Index, which is information of which is given in Appendix C. Clearly at the moment, as this is a new policy, we're starting from almost a kind of zero position, but we can look to see how things improve over a period of time. Thank you. Happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions? Hermione.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I welcome this because I do think it is important with all the services and policies that the council has that we assess the value of things, not just purely in monetary terms, but in terms of how these things will benefit the members and the residents of East Hart. So I think this is a very good approach and I welcome it. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? In which case, I can't see anything. Can I take members to page 70? To page 75, where we have 4 recommendations. I won't read them out, A, B, C, and D. Could I have a proposer, please? Alex, seconded Diane. Those in favour of the recommendations? That's everyone. Those against? Nobody. Thank you very much. And the next one is the corporate annual report. I believe, is this where we have a presentation?
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Chairman. Instead of a presentation, I've got a video, which will be very interesting, hopefully. So as you know, it's that time of year again where we do the annual report, which is a 100-page mammoth document with lots of appendices and lots of very detailed information around all the things that have been achieved over the last 12 months, both in terms of actions from the corporate plan and the relevant indicators. So in order to spare you from me waffling on for 5 minutes about some of the highlights, we've got a very short 3-minute video taking us through some of the achievements in the last 12 months. The idea is we're showing it tonight for the first time. Some members of staff have seen it. After this, we'll make it public as this paper goes through the committee process and hopefully just provides a sort of short executive summary of what the council's been up to for the last 12 months. I think I did something similar a while ago, a couple of years ago, and it didn't have any sound. And there was a sort of awkward silence whilst we were all in the room staring at it for 3 minutes. So this time around, we put some funky music on. So we'll have a look at it and I'll welcome any feedback.
I shall vacate my chair so as everyone can look at it and listen to your funky music.
And that's it. So like I say, for anybody who perhaps doesn't have the time to go through the full report and the 100 pages worth of appendices, that might be a more interesting and easily digestible set of information. So I welcome any feedback on that. Any other questions on the report?
Thank you very much. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was a good video, and it's good to have something that can actually be put out that people can see and can sort of visualize almost the work this council was doing. These bike racks, so I saw they had 80 bike racks around the district, which is fantastic, and I know that fits in well with our corporate plan. I'm wondering if a list of those can be disseminated to members, and again for Grant, I think I've raised before that'd be good just to have disseminated to all members a list of what's going on in their ward. So I think we're doing a lot of good work around the district. Clearly, it'd just be good to know that we're getting stuff done in every ward. I think that's very important because we're here to serve a whole district, and I think it's important that we keep doing that well.
Okay, I don't know if you or Jeff want to answer that one. Or...
Yeah, we can certainly get the information on the bike racks. I know that Councillor Curtis has raised a few times in this forum about the need for some of the information by ward. I think where we can get that easily, we'll share that. I can certainly look into that. It's not always, some of the data is not always lends itself well to divvying up at that level, but we can certainly look into it.
Thank you. On that, do we actually put a sign on there saying it is a bike rack? Because I know there are various different designs, and I know in Bishop Stortford, a lot of people didn't realise that they were actually bike racks. So that may be something we need to look at as well. Norma.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at page 123, and it's talking about the launchpad facility. Does that include Ware, or is it just Bishop Stortford?
So the figures are including Ware as well. So actually we've had quite a lot of success with the Ware satellite. That's doing really well, more numbers than ever. Obviously the arrangement there is that the income we get from Ware is shared 50-50 with the Priory Trading Company who are connected to Ware Town Council. So it's been good news from them. What we've also had is a couple of referrals into the Ware Launchpad, and we haven't been able to help them, but they've subsequently taken space in the town or in the Priory itself. So there's quite a good process for moving people through that conveyor belt of growth into bigger offices. So I think the Launchpad has been one of the success stories post-COVID. The demand for co-working space is stronger than ever.
Can I ask a supplementary, please, Chairman? Talking about the Launchpad and Bishop Stortford, is there any success or luck in finding somewhere else for all these small businesses to go before Charrington shuts?
So we have had a look at a couple of venues. I think the latest one we looked at was in Jackson Square, above where the retail units are. There's quite a large bit of office space there, and we've been talking to the owners about possibly using that. But of course, what we can't do is give them a date at the moment because it's contingent on the Old River Lane development and hitting some of the milestones there in terms of the planning application and so forth. So we're talking to a number of potential landlords. I think once we know a bit more about the Old River Lane project, we can start to move forward with some heads of terms. But I think there are a few options in Bishop Stortford. Ideally, we'd like to stay in the town centre. Of course, the other one could be Northgate End, the commercial space there, depending on timescales as well. But if any councillors in the room have, you're aware of any kind of space in and around the town that could be suitable, do let us know, because I think all options are on the table for us at the moment.
Thank you. Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, could that video be sent out to members? Is it possible? Thank you. The other thing was I noticed phone calls are down, which I'm not surprised at because I could never get through. I know it's been said many times before, but is there any way that we can improve the telephone system?
Yeah, I absolutely recognise this, and I know a number of councillors in the room have contacted me directly. It has been an issue. We've suffered from a number of members of staff leaving the organisation in quick succession to take up other roles elsewhere. I don't think that's necessarily because it's any worse in our customer services. It's just the fact that the jobs market at the moment is quite fluid and people can move between places quite easily. Replacing people and getting them trained up to a point where they're actually competent to take the calls takes some time. However, in the last 6 weeks, we have taken on 3 new members of staff, and we took on another member of staff this week, which means 4 members of staff in total. 2 of those are already on the phones, so they've got to a point where they're sort of sufficiently trained to deal with relatively straightforward queries, and the other 2, hopefully in the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, should be able to be in the same position. So I'm hoping within the next sort of 2 to 3 months, we should see a bit of a turning curve on those call answer rates. So yeah, now we've got the bums on the seats, it should really make a difference.
Yep. Holly.
Thank you, and thank you for that video. I do like reading, but not as much as I like sitting there for 3 minutes and having the information thrown at me in nutshells. So that's great. I also think that that would be really good for residents to have, but potentially making it into like a PDF of a few pages so that it can be read rather than having to be watched. Because I think all of the information in there is key, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of actually the amount of things that are going on and how well lots of them are doing. So that was all. I almost clapped, it was that good.
You should have done. I don't know. I don't think that requires an answer, but well done. Chris.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions actually. One was, I think, brought up in the pre-meeting. I'll do that one first. What are the reasons behind missing the target for HMO applications? That's page 107. What people want to refer to it. What is the council doing to avert this, and what is the likelihood of this happening again?
Jeff.
Thank you indeed, Councillor Wilson, for the question. Well, in 21-22, only 8 of 24 HMO licences were determined within the target of 6 months from receipt of a valid application. This has been primarily due to 2 factors: A, environmental health officers prioritising COVID-related duties, and B, officers working with landlords to resolve any problems found during inspection with a view to making a positive determination. This latter reason has led in 4 cases to the service breaching the target time while landlords carry out further works, rather than issuing a negative determination to a landlord who is actually working closely with the council. Now COVID-related pressures have dropped, performance is improving again, with 75% of applications this year currently projected to have been determined within the 6-month period. There continues, however, to be cases of prolonged determinations due to landlords' efforts to remedy problems, so officers are looking at a mechanism to temporarily stop the clock on the determination pathway for cases where a landlord is genuinely working with the council. Landlords may operate HMO once they've made a valid application, so long as a serious health and safety risk is not present. So stopping the clock in this way should give members a better measure of the performance of the team itself. Of course, officers will continue to manage cases closely so that stopping the clock isn't simply used by landlords as a way of delaying necessary works.
Do you have a supplementary in that, or do you want to move on to another?
No, thank you. That's encouraging. This is about the Castle Park project in Bishop Stortford, page 106. When do you envisage that being completed? Because it's been quite a while in the offing. If we don't get the extra National Lottery funding in January, what aspects of the project may be in jeopardy? How might it change? And also, if there are reduced costs, the same thing, what will that mean for the project?
Well, the paper is coming on Castle Park's executive on the 12th of July, which will be the next major milestone. I can't remember from the top of my head what the actual sort of final completion date of the project is, but as far as I'm aware, the national lottery funding is not in jeopardy. That's sort of been secured.
Thank you. I believe we've already started some of it, haven't we? So
The papers say that there will be some further National Lottery funding in January. That was more the question, that is that going to happen or not? And if it doesn't happen, does that mean we've got problems with completing it?
Should we look forward to what's coming to the exec?
Yeah, I mean, I think that funding is what we've now been promised. So I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think the paper that comes to exec on the 12th will explain a bit more about that funding aspect of that.
Okay. David, do you want to
I
come
was
in on that
just
one?
going to say, putting on a different hat as chairman of the Finance Committee of Bishop Stortford Town Council, I'd say that it's not under threat at all. In fact, it is one is coming to where the executive will actually unlock that money. So I don't see a problem. The works have started, and of course the delays so far have mainly been down to COVID in large part. There are other reasons, but mainly it's been COVID related, and now it's been because of inflation in the construction industry. So I don't see any significant risks to the project at all.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to come back quickly?
Thanks, Councillor Snowden. I just wanted to quote what I've read here. It says we have submitted an application for extra funds from the National Lottery with a decision due in January. That's what I was referring to.
Well, thank you for that. James.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to comment on the video again. I think it looks very slick. I think the one thing, and I'm not requesting, I don't think it would be a changeable thing, but when we compare to last year, and you have a couple of comparisons that are obviously very favourable, when you then when there's some percentage figures that don't then compare to last year, it sort of highlights that maybe they haven't gone as well as they might have done. I'm just thinking the recycling rates and the planning enforcement levels, they come directly after look how well we did last year, and then there's just a sort of lack. So I just wondered if that was we need to report on it in that way, but it's just that's the way my mind worked, I'm afraid.
No, I think that's a fair comment. I don't know who wants to answer that, Ben.
I think that's a fair challenge. The video itself, I suppose, is a little bit of PR. So obviously, it's slanted towards some of the more favourable comparisons. But in the interest of balance, maybe that could be looked at. And certainly, for anyone that's interested, you can look into the report and uncover some of those things for yourself. But I think that's a fair challenge, and maybe I'll take that away to the comms team and see whether we can present something a bit more objective.
Thank you. James, do you have a supplementary? No. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to follow on from what Councillor Frecknell raised there about planning enforcement. This is a significant issue in the ward I represent, Great Hamwell. At the minute, we have a couple of significant outstanding cases in terms of enforcement that needs to be taken. I'm just wondering, it's perhaps not the best night to ask because we don't have any planning officers present as far as I can see, or the executive member, understandably, because that wasn't on the agenda. But given that we're discussing this report, this annual report, just want to sort of seek clarity on where we are with enforcement, because this is important to residents. Residents want to see that that planning law is being respected by people, and that they can't just sort of, in the case, there's one case in my ward where someone thinks that they can just dig up land next to their house. I'm not even sure who owns the land, but they can just dig up land next to their house, large patch of it, dig great area for drainage, etc. in it, and just sort of allow us to do that. So I think, we've got to make sure that we're on top of this, because it's something that residents do care about, and it's something that residents are contacting councillors about. And I know that, the cases in my ward, not the only ones around the district, all members have this in their inbox. So can enforcement please be prioritised a bit more than at present, because there are outstanding cases that need to be dealt with around the district.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, obviously Ben isn't planning. I would suggest you email Jan Goodeve and ask Jan, because obviously she's not here tonight because she wasn't expected to be here, and it would be unfair to ask Ben to answer something on planning when he's not a planning officer. Did you want to say something, Ben?
It's just a minor comment on the other point that Councillor Curtis was making. So you're right. Thank you for that, Chairman, in terms of the answer. But in terms of it being important for members of the public, perhaps in the covering report, we could just expand a little bit of the narrative around the enforcement activity, which I think is one of the other points you're making in terms of raising the profile to show that we are actually taking this stuff seriously. So I can look into that on the main report.
Well, thank you. Alex, happy with that?
Thank you. It's very welcome. Yes, I think it's more on that sort of communication stuff I was looking at this stage. I am working with Councillor Goodeve on this, but I think that's important, because by putting the message out there that we're not tolerating these breaches, then hopefully some of those responsible for said breaches will get the hint and stop digging up land in the way that we're seeing people coming in and digging up land without any permits or permissions of any sort. It's not fair on those people that have waited to get the permission they needed to perform works on their house, adjacent to their house, etc. So I think we've got to make sure everyone can see that we're being consistent on this and that fair play is being upheld.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I'll say if you do, if you can email Jan, then I'm sure she'll give you the answers that you require. Are there any other questions from anyone who hasn't spoken? I mean, Mary, are you happy with the presentation or?
No, I was interested in the 317 enforcement cases, how many had been resolved actually, but that might be in the full report because we also have major issues in our ward with somebody who ignores enforcement and now seems to have escaped the net completely.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I want to steer away from ward specific because we are here for the general, but I don't know if you would know the answer to that one, Ben. Again, it's probably not you.
Well, I think it goes back to the point in the narrative. There probably isn't that level of detail, and of course, it does depend on what you mean by resolved as well, because an investigation, and it doesn't necessarily mean a resolution in terms of what some members of the public might expect. I think the point I'll take away from this is that the section on the action about undertaking a robust planning enforcement service needs to be a bit more detailed. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. And again, you can always email Jan and ask those questions. Are there anything else? Carolyn, have you got any question? No, no problem. I got your name right this time, which is good. Are there any other questions from members? In which case, if I can take members to page 99. There is a recommendation that the committee members note the content of the report and agree that it is recommended to the council via the executive. Could I have a proposer for that, please? Suzanne, seconded. Holly, could I have a show of hands? Those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. And the next item is item 9, which is the regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, REPA policy. And this is just an annual review. Put me tea, I could say that, but not annual review. This is an annual review, which is obviously was very little to comment on. But James, do you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Members may recall when this came before this committee back in 2020, the council hadn't actually updated its RIPA policy for a number of years, and when we brought that to this committee, we said that it would be an annual exercise, and that it's important to bring before the committee whether there are anything of note to report or otherwise, just so that it's kept in the forefront of members' minds. The nature of RIPA is that the councils don't tend to use it anymore, but that's not an excuse to forget about it or to not report it to members. So we do bring this report every year around this time. The last time we brought this report, there was nothing to update members on at all. The policy remained fit for purpose. There was nothing that needed to be added, nothing that needed to be taken out of it. That's not quite the case this time. There is a slight amendment, slight addition that we're putting into the policy. You'll see a paragraph 2.4 that on the 15th of September 2021, the Covert Human Intelligence Source Criminal Conduct Act 2021 came into law. And what that piece of legislation does, it puts into the RIPA Act this tool known as a criminal conduct authorization. Now, what that does, it allows a CHIS, which is a covert human intelligence source, who is undercover, to participate in activity which would otherwise be illegal. Now, this power, this tool, is not given to local authorities. It's given to the police and some other public authorities, but not local authorities. However, I think it is important that we put it into the policy. So there is a new part that's been put in just to highlight the fact that this tool exists, that it's not available to local authorities. And by doing this, I think it demonstrates that we've applied our mind to that. It's showing that we're not ignorant to that we've not missed it somehow. And at some future point, if someone does trot down to the legal department and say, I've heard about these criminal conduct authorizations, can I have one, please? We can direct them to the RIPA policy, and there should be a paragraph in there that says, no, you can't. So I think it's good practice to put it in there. It brings the policy up to date. as I say, this was last when was it? Yeah, it was last approved by the executive in July 2020. So it's a good opportunity to bring it back so that it'll get approved by the executive, hopefully this time around in 2022. And we are in a situation where the policy is bang up to date. Nothing much else to say about the policy. That the council hasn't used any of its RIPA powers at all since the last time this was before you, but I'm happy to take any questions members might have on that. And well, I won't steal your thunder, Chairman, but the recommendations are on page 135.
Thank you. I'm not expecting a massive comments here because it's more of a housekeeping exercise, but Norma.
Yes, it's really just for clarification, Chairman. Does this include cameras where there is rubbish dumped on a regular basis, like we have on the border with Harlow? There's a lay-by there, and it's always full up with stuff and rubbish, and it comes under East Herts. Does this cover that, or is that something different?
So the policy itself will cover the covert use of surveillance technology like cameras. So whenever the council decides to use cameras in a covert manner, that is to say that there are no notices up saying, you know, Smiley or on camera or anything of that nature, then it will be in this policy. And that has been the case since this came to the council in 2020. So there's nothing changing on that basis. Everything remains as it was. What you will find we do in order to not have, because RIPA, in order to get RIPA authorizations, you have to go to the magistrate's court. It is quite it's a bit of a route that you've got to take it through. And what we try to do to avoid having to do that is that we will make our cameras overt. So we will put cameras up, but we will also put notifications up to say there are cameras in operation in this area. Or like I say, you might have seen one to say Smiley or on camera, just to let people know that there are cameras in operation in that area, and therefore they're no longer covert, and therefore they no longer fall under RIPA.
Thank you. There's no other comments. Can I refer members to page 135? Sorry, Alex.
I'm happy to propose a recommendation on page 135.
Thank you. So there's two recommendations proposed by Alex, A and B, seconded by David. Kind of a show of hands for those in favour, please. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Next item is the draft work programme. Rain.
Thank you, Chairman. Oh, blimey, sorry, lost it. Thank you, Chairman. This is your usual report to members on your draft work programme, which is appended to the report. As you'll see from the work programme, there are a number of suggestions in the report in terms of what you might wish to look at in the forthcoming civic year. We have been trying to get members to sort of firm up on some of the suggestions that have been put forward there. And I believe we have some items for consideration up until November, but the aim is to still try and get this agreed even further. Members are quite welcome to submit any suggestion for scrutiny, and we'd take that further. Got nothing else to add, Chairman, unless James has something to add.
James, do you want to?
Nothing big to add. We have discussed this before, obviously, as Lorraine said. What we're trying to get to is to have at least a skeleton, skeleton to the whole of the committee all the way through until the end of the civic year. The very nature of overview and scrutiny is that as we progress through the year, more things will get added on. Policies that are being going through the cycle, going to exec and to council, they will be added up further points, but it would be beneficial if we can have a sort of just a skeleton of the seed priority items or the forward plan items that this committee is going to be considering, you know, in January and March of 2023 as well. This will also help with, you know, giving the exec members that notice that they may be required for those meetings, make it easier for them to attend. I know members of this committee have expressed frustration in the past when certain exec members have not been able to come along. And, you know, if we've got something on the work programme in January of 2023 or March 2023, we can obviously give those exec members that forward notice to make sure that they are a little bit more available.
Thank you. I think, so as members are aware, I believe we are moving the parking signage to the September meeting, whereas at the moment it's in the November meeting along with parking charges. So we are moving that one to September. Are there any comments, questions, James?
Thank you, Chair. It's just that it's come up again tonight. I'm just thinking about planning. I know planning's been discussed for a little while about trying to get it onto the work programme, and I know it's been deferred and the structuring and the programme in place. I know it's down for November by the look of it at the moment. I'm just wondering if, I guess it would mean that housing and planning would be in September, but I just think it seems to be a common theme that comes up in the committee, and I wonder if there's any way that we can get planning onto, you know, particularly maybe enforcement onto the September programme.
Certainly, I mean, the head of planning, I think was meant to be, it was at this meeting or the next one, but certainly but due to issues within the department, as you've said, possible changes, etc. The head of planning did ask if they could go into, I think it was the November one. But we can certainly ask if possible to bring it forward. But I think we do have, there's going to be, I think September's going to be quite a heavy meeting, because if we look at those two things, the housing strategy and the stricter taxi emissions, I think they should be two interesting topics, and with the potential parking signage. So it may well be that it still has to stick to November, but if we can, I know Mynie and I will liaise and see if we can bring it forward, but I don't want to bog us down too much in the meeting with too many heavy topics. Mynie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would agree with that. And I'm so pleased to see the housing strategy action plans coming at long last. So I would hate anything to be added which might squeeze out a proper discussion on that. Yes, but I heard what was said from Sarah Saunders, head of planning, that there have been difficulties with staffing, and she did ask that her report could be delayed. So maybe a tactful conversation, but I don't think we can press too hard on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from members? This is an ongoing document, so it will be updated, and at the next meeting we can be looking at closer to the end of the civic year ones. In which case, if I can refer members to page 178, there are 3 recommendations, A, B, and C. Could I have a proposer for the recommendations? Ian, seconded by Alex. Those in favour? I think that's unanimous. So thank you very much. In which case, I don't think there is any other business. So I declare the meeting closed at 3 minutes past